So I will start by introducing myself, and I'll let Kai say hi, and then we'll meet our interns in just a second. How about I turn my camera on as well? There we go, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So I'm Kevin Kochansky. I'm client liaison at Notch8. And Kai, do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Kai Stroud, a developer at Notch8.
So Notch8 is, I'll get to introductions. Notch8 and Learn Academy have an internship program that we partner on. And I'll tell you just a little bit about that as an introduction here. Notch8 is a web development consultancy specializing in Ruby on Rails, and we were founded in 2007 by Rob Kaufman. In 2016, as many of you know, we entered the Samvera space, so we've been pretty active here and enjoyed interacting with a lot of the folks on this call over the several years. In 2015, Notch8, the founders of Notch8 co-founded Learn Academy. So Learn Academy is a web development bootcamp based here in San Diego. This year they've gone 100% remote, so anybody around the country could actually enroll in Learn Academy, and it's been very successful doing that. And an important part of that program is the internship. So it's a 16-week program, and the last 4 weeks of the program after the classroom instruction or virtual classroom instruction is a 1-month internship. There's a lot of local community partners that will take interns from Learn. I went to Learn Academy and I had an internship as well. But Notch8 very often will take some interns from their sister company. So this year we were lucky to get 3 really talented interns. We handpicked them, we get first choice, and we get to pick the best. And we decided for the first time ever to put Learn Academy students who are brand new to coding, just starting their careers, onto a Samvera project. So we thought that giving a little presentation here to introduce that and tell a story about how that went might be of interest to the folks in the community. The project that we chose to put them on was the Bulkrax gem that Notch8 put together for Haiku and Hyrax for bulk import and bulk export. And I will pass it on to Kai to tell you a little bit more about why we chose that project.
So for a little bit of context, I kind of served as the project manager for this round of interns. The reason that we picked Bulkrax was that the immediate needs for the project that we had in mind were not super deep into the Hyrax or Samvera in general stack. And so there wasn't a ton of overhead knowledge that was absolutely necessary to be productive and to see progress being made. Another good reason to pick it was there's a good payoff because the interns could see their work in action, and their work would go into all kinds of different projects. Everyone who currently uses the Bulkrax gem and would have a much easier way of getting the work out there to actually get good use. It also incorporates the intern experience with a lot of the Notch8 team. Over the years, Notch8 has had more and more people working on Samvera projects, and so a lot of knowledge for that software has incorporated its way into the Notch8 team, and so lots of people are able to provide feedback and help when they had questions. And also it was open source, which again kind of feeds back into the being able to see your code get good use and get out into a community that lots of people can see it and use it and get some use out of it. So we keep talking about the interns. Some of them are actually able to make it to this talk and were kind enough to participate. So we're actually going to go into introductions for them. April, Jeremy, and Ruben. Let's start with April. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, thanks for the warm introduction, Kai. My name is April Rieger. I am a white female in my late 30s with curly brown hair. A couple of my strengths were that I have a background in graphic and web design with front-end languages, and some of my goals for this internship was to create a feature for my portfolio, as well as contribute back to open source and give back to the community at the same time.
Thanks. And Jeremy.
Hi guys, I'm Jeremy, early 30s, Filipino. Going into Learn Academy, one of my strengths was coming from project management, and going into the internship, one of my main goals was to contribute to open source, which fortunately I was able to, and also work with other developers via an agile process. So thanks to working within Notch 8, I was able to experience that firsthand.
Thank you. This is Kevin again, and I did neglect to describe myself. So I'm a white male in his mid-40s with a closely cropped, some might say bald head. Our third intern, who was equally stellar but wasn't able to join us today, was Ruben. And some of his goals for the internship were to work on a project that he'd be able to feature in his portfolio and to just really take advantage of that time to ask questions and make the most of his learning experience. So I want to ask a couple questions of our interns that are able to join us about what it was like to jump into Samvera. And my first one is going to be, what was your introduction to the Samvera community like? And let's start with April.
Yeah, I think it was the first week, Kevin, of our internship. You invited us to the Haiku interest group, and it was so great to hear some of the Samvera technology, as well as hear the community and having the universities and scholars the ability to access the digital collections, and also like tying back in and making my contribution a little bit more meaningful. So it was really amazing.
Thank you. How about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, everything that April said, but in terms of technical side, coming as a junior developer, freshly out of coursework, the code base was really huge, and understanding the architecture was definitely above my pay grade at the time. So hearing terms like Solar, Fedora, Hydra, things like that, I had no idea. But fortunately, I was able to understand that we were just working in the realm of Bulkrax, so that helped me quantify it a lot better going forward.
Maybe you can continue on that, Jeremy, for our next question, which is, what would you say were some of the struggles of jumping into the more technical side of Samvera?
Like I said, at least in my opinion, looking at the code was huge. But then one of the first things I noticed while jumping into these tickets was, I think some of the dependencies or things used seemed like it was using older versions. So finding documentation to help me build upon that was more difficult just because the versions were older. On top of that, it was using Ruby on Rails, which was something I wasn't super comfortable with going into the internship.
Okay, how about April?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Jeremy said, yeah, the documentation for all of the gems or the dependencies that we used were out of date. So there was one issue where we had to incorporate some of the Bootstrap into it, and we were using Bootstrap 4, and none of the styling was working. And we were just hitting our heads against the wall. And then finally Kai had told us, like, yeah, we use a later version of Bootstrap. So that was kind of fun. But like, as you all know, there's many layers and connections in these applications that use the Samvera technology. So it's a bit overwhelming at first. So, but it's nice to have the community as well as Notch 8 there to hold our hand and walk us through it.
Well, thanks both of you. I will pass it to Kai to tell us a little bit more about the work that was done on the internship.
Thanks. So like I kind of touched on a bit earlier, a lot of the project this time around was UI focused. And so we'll jump into some of the specifics for that. Namely, a lot of the views that Bulkrax uses had very data heavy fields, like the parser fields and the field mapping. A lot of it is just key values that are mapped out in HTML and really difficult to look at when you're just trying to skim through and find a particular field. And so we wanted to make those fields a little nicer to look at, a little easier to get a quick glance and find out what you're looking at. As well as on the importer show page, the collection entries and work entries tables. The columns weren't aligned. If you look at the status and errors columns, they weren't aligned between the two tables, which again, just kind of makes quickly glancing at the table to find out whether something failed or not, what its status is, just that much harder. And so we wanted to kind of hammer out some of those finer details to make it a much better user experience. Likewise for the entry pages, not order pages, those also had some pretty data heavy fields. Specific to these pages, some of the the entry pages, if an entry errored, it would contain error information for why it errored, so that the user using the system can come in, see what went wrong so that they can help hopefully rectify it, or send the error information to their dev team so that they can take a look at it. And in particular, we wanted to include the error trace on the page itself, which again would just make troubleshooting that much easier instead of having to dig through server logs. But in reality, it just ended up being a huge block of text that wasn't really that helpful for troubleshooting. It was at that point just easier to go and troubleshoot elsewhere. And so we wanted to, again, kind of make those easier to look at, more useful to the user, and the like. Other than strictly view-related changes, there were also some bugs that we wanted to hammer out. For example, there was one where if you were trying to split a multi-value field, usually these happen on semicolon, but for the pipe character, which is a different option to split, for that character specifically, it would not trim the white space around it. So looking at the pipe, at the top, there's white space between the URLs, and then at the bottom, the parsed out field, it split into two different values, but on the end of the first one and the beginning of the second one, there's white space. And for controlled fields, this would actually cause issues because those have to be exact matches for dropdowns to work, for example. So those were some of the bigger pieces that we had goals for. And so we're actually going to jump into a demo of some of the work that was done. And April is actually going to take us through that.
Awesome, thanks, Kai. So here on the show importer page, I just wanted to call out that we replaced those toggles with accordions using small design interactions on click that Jeremy created. And we created a more interactive and engaging experience for our users. And then we also included the bolding of the key values to differentiate between the title and the content. We also added syntax highlighting to the field mapping field, which is very data heavy, and it makes it a little bit easier to look at. We were also able to provide users with the ability to alternate between that full and that raw markup language for the field mapping in order to send the markup language over to the developer. We also created a visual solution for the misalignment in the columns through the addition of the tabbed view for our work entries and our collection entries. And we did all this while making sure that the design matched the original and existing design of Haiku. And then if we could go over to the show entry page, I just wanted to point out the error tracing. So this is the example of the error trace with the ability to alternate again between the full and the raw markup language, just to help ensure users can quickly identify the error or to troubleshoot for themselves or send it off to the developer.
Awesome. Thanks, April. So now we're going to move into some of the takeaways that April and Jeremy had from the internship. We have a couple more questions for them. The first one being, what was it like working in an open source stack? Let's toss this one to Jeremy first.
Thanks. Before jumping officially into web development, I knew of open source software and code, but never really knew how it actually happened. So through this internship, it was kind of an eye-opening experience to understand how people contribute exactly to open source. For example, guidelines they have to follow, making the PR requests and waiting for it to get approved, things like that.
And April.
Yeah, being able to work on this open source project allowed us the ability to learn and grow in a very friendly atmosphere. Being able to tap into the Slack group, search around for questions, because I wasn't too comfortable asking just yet, but now I am. Very friendly community, so thank you so much. And it's so rewarding at the same time to work on something that the community could also use.
Thank you both. And our last question for you both was, has your experience working with Samvera affected your goals as a developer? And if so, how? Let's start with April.
Thanks, Kai. Working with Samvera, as well as with Notch 8, has provided me the ability to apply the knowledge that we gained at Learn to real life applications, as well as accomplishing the goals that I set out for myself during the internship. So it's pretty amazing.
For me, working immediately with Samvera was a great way to see how engaged and selfless development community really is. So that basically has encouraged me to continue contributing to open source where I can throughout my new lifelong career in web development.
Well, thank you. I will definitely open to questions if folks want to enter the QA. We do have plenty of time if anybody has anything to discuss, but this could also be a perfect time for a morning coffee break. But before folks tune out, I really want to thank our interns. Taking interns is just part of Notch 8's culture. We like to mentor, we like to disseminate knowledge and just help contribute to the community. And that's really speaks to what drew us to the Samvera community in the first place. So it was just really great convergence of things to be able to bring interns into a Samvera project a little bit. And April and Jeremy and Ruben were all just really great. And I'm just happy to share here that April started full-time as a Notch 8 developer this week. So we're very happy to have her. Love to bring on more interns full-time, but you have to pick when the skill set is a perfect match to what we need. So we're really grateful. And I want to thank Kai also for helping out with us. I know you're a bit under the weather, but I really appreciate you taking on this presentation this morning. Let's see, are there any questions?
Yeah, Kevin, there was a question in Slack for April and Jeremy. And April, you touched on this a bit, but maybe each of you could go into this in a little more detail. It was, did you ever ask questions on the Samvera Slack channels or on the message board? And if so, how did that go?
So for me, I did find the Slack channel and it was an amazing resource. I didn't quite feel comfortable yet talking or asking questions within, but it was really nice to be able to search through it and see if any of my questions had already been asked and to try to take a look there, as well as you guys have a really extensive board with the wiki page and all the images that you guys have. So it was very nice to have those resources, but I do now feel comfortable asking questions. And I think I threw my hat in the ring for the UI development of this Samvera product. So I'm excited to get on that team and help out.
Awesome. Be happy to have you there.
Another question from Emily in the QA interface. How much influence do you have, and I guess this is for Notch 8, how much influence do you have over what's studied through Learn Academy? And can you help provide more Rails experience, for example? I'm going to give you the Notch 8 side, but then I would actually love to hear from the interns about how they felt the Rails experience was. The curriculum, the initial curriculum, 5 years ago was co-developed by the founders of Notch 8 and the leaders at Learn Academy. And they regularly, at least monthly, if not more, reevaluate that curriculum and change it. I was in the program myself 2 years ago, and they made midstream changes to respond to the difference in demand of today's tech scene and what jobs are available in the community. And they really continually reevaluate and sculpt that curriculum to make sure that it remains relevant and that we produce, or that they produce employable developers. So it's founded on Ruby on Rails and React, and Ruby on Rails continues to be the kind of back-end core of that curriculum. But maybe April or Jeremy would like to talk about the level of experience there and how you think how equipped you feel.
I feel like what Learn provided in terms of Ruby on Rails is definitely sufficient. It definitely provided fundamentals moving forward for different backend languages. So understanding how Ruby can relate to Python, for example, Learn has definitely set that foundation, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, for me, I already kind of had that front end development, like CSS, HTML side, all the design basics. So I really dove into the Ruby and the Ruby on the Rails and more JavaScript and React.js. And I think they really equipped us with the ability to see those connections, whether it's through the tables or any of the Rails or the Ruby connections through the Samvera and the hierarchs. So it was really easy to kind of pick up on those and the connections. And yeah, it was really good.
Thanks. Any other questions? In the meantime, I also want to make sure that folks know that they can register for their free Connect 2020 swag bag. Notch8 is just going to send things out because we missed being at a conference this year too. So we're happy to send a little goodie bag to anybody that signs up for one. That's at haikuup.com/swag. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I just want to say thanks again. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share this experience at Connect. And we'll pass it back to Heather. Thank you.